Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, whatever time of day you are watching. This is the Victor Roll Wrestling Podcast. I am the storyteller, Alex Braddock.
And I am your other host, the 6'10" cameraman of Pro Wrestling 225, the one, the only, the sexy, Dylan Gilbert. So I stole that one from was it Semi Pro?
That one caught me off guard. But if you are not aware of who we are, this is the Victor Roll Wrestling Podcast, where we recap the week of wrestling here, and then hopefully later in the week we produce something else. So make sure you hit the subscribe and notification bell, all the YouTube stuffs, and also Spotify stuffs. Check us out if you're listening on there.
That's right. Video and audio on Spotify. So if you don't want to see our stupid faces, but you want to hear our takes, that is a possibility.
And you want to listen to under the weather voices, then yes, feel free to go check that out. But Dylan, we had a bit of a coasting week. We had a off of big pay-per-view and into another pay-per-view for another company. This week was a little bit of a lull, and we were definitely, I wouldn't use the word burnt out, but I was definitely in a lull for wrestling after this action-packed weekend that we just had.
I think the term that I like to use is wrestling fatigue, and it's not necessarily that I'm burned out, but there is so much content right now, which is a great thing, and also sometimes it can be a little exhausting. I mean, we're coming off of, we had a 225 show. The next day we had Wembley, and then just like coming off of that, I completely missed Raw outside of highlights this week, just because it was just like boom, boom, so much going on, and then just take a day.
Right. No, very much so. And I mean, look, if we're going to talk about Raw, let's speed through the highlights. I didn't watch much of it either, so we'll kind of do a recap because that's what the people are expecting, Dylan. So we need to just take it down.
That's right.
We had two triple threat matches to determine the finals of the number one contender of the Intercontinental title. Man, that's a mouthful. But the winners of those two matches is Pete Dunne and Jey Uso. So we will be having Uso versus Dunne for the number one contendership of the IC title, which, sure, whatever. At least it's being contended.
It does feel like a WWE 2K Universe mode pairing. I think it's coming down to, is it a Fatal 4-Way they're doing? Because I know there's two more qualifying matches that I saw.
Oh, maybe announced. There is.
So I think it's a 4-way for number one contendership.
That tells you how much I've paid attention to.
So they were definitely doing rundowns on Bash in Berlin, which is why I remember.
Got it. Cool. Which we will talk about later.
Just Pete Dunne in any sort of title picture, just shut up and take my money. I love him. I love him, and I love seeing him get his due.
As long as he doesn't get squashed to Braun Breaker.
Yeah.
Speaking of a Braun, we have a Braun Strowman and a Bronson Reed in, was it a street fight? I don't know if it was actually a street fight.
I don't remember if it was a street fight or not. I just saw the segment, like somebody snipped out on Reddit, of just them fighting through the back.
Right.
And then the tsunami onto the roof of the car looked awesome.
It was amazing.
For my one gripe. We talked about this off air. I think WWE are the kings of unnecessary pyro. If somebody hits a soundboard, the soundboard has to explode. Like, there's not that much. It's not a high voltage thing if you're running a soundboard. So the tsunami on the car, I was like, man, that looks awesome. And then just the light does like the Orange Cassidy pip.
Yeah, like, just a little fart of pyro, just a little boop, and that's
just
it.
That little spark, like they broke one of the tiny light bulbs, but they broke the tiny light bulb like 5 seconds after impact. So tell me how that works. But
yeah, it's
otherwise totally badass. Like
welcome to wrestling.
They're making Bronson Reed look like an absolute monster, and I'm glad they're finally doing something, because like he's so good, and I'm glad that he's finally getting a push, as the dirt sheets would say.
For sure. And then the last thing we had on Monday Night Raw was Uncle Howdy and Chad Gable. Culmination of months of storytelling, I think, is what we're at now.
Oh, yeah.
With, of course, Howdy going over Gable. It is weird time to be a wrestling fan. And I know we talk about how much we love what Wyndham / Bray Wyatt did, and how much Bo Dallas / Uncle Howdy / Taylor Rotunda is doing to honor him and that whole faction. It sucks that we missed that this week. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more on it next week. So make sure you stay tuned. I'm trying to do advertising inside the podcast. Moving on to NXT. Say his name and he'll appear. Still not here. One day. But we'll, it's just NXT is NXT. They're pushing hard towards the pay-per-view that is happening the night of what we're recording, so maybe we'll recap that next week.
That might be a fun little bonus thing. Just watch that recap. Who knows?
Absolutely. Maybe we're figuring out content, but this is a recap.
Guys, we're trying.
Moving on to Wednesday. We're going to move in quick. We're trying to make these recaps a little bit faster, so that way you don't have an hour and a half of weekly wrestling talk and then more content on the side of that. So Dynamite, of course, if anyone's listened to the podcast before, you know we're going to ramble on here for another 20 minutes.
Yeah, this is your whole recap, folks.
We're going to start off with a surprise Mox return. Good old John Moxley showing up and telling Tony Schiavone, hey, I'm here. And then that's about the extent. And then he turns around and goes, this isn't your AEW anymore.
So what do we think is going to happen with this? Like, I've seen some people speculating that this is like a new version of Blackpool. I've seen some speculation that this is like Moxley kind of just doing his own thing. I've also I had somebody present the idea to me, what if this is how they bring, which makes my spine shake a little bit, Shane McMahon into the fold.
Yeah, no.
And like an invasion type of angle. And I'm like, please God, no. But if you're going to do an invasion angle, John Moxley being at the center of it, I could see. But at this point, I view, as crazy as it's going to sound, I view John Moxley as more of an AEW guy than a WWE guy.
Yeah.
The same way that like Swerve is technically an ex-WWE guy, but I don't see him as a WWE guy anymore.
Yeah.
Danielson, like there's a few of these guys that like I know they had prolific careers, but I don't see them as that guy anymore.
Right.
So I don't know what they're doing with it, but I'm interested.
Well, later in the show, we had Mina Shafir show up, and from my knowledge, I don't remember Mina being in the WWE.
She was in NXT, I want to say.
Great.
She also was part of Ronda's like 4 Horsewomen. So she had not a lot of marquee matches, but I do think she had matches.
Got it. Okay. Well, I mean, look, I love a good shooter style as long as she can do it properly.
Well, and you saw the kind of glimpse of, and I think from what I hear, Moxley has kind of taken a liking to what she's doing on the indies. She has been, from the first time she showed up on AEW, me and you were actually at the Dynamite where she had one of her first matches against, I think it was Sky Blue, and that crowd, you could have heard someone fart in the third row from where we were at on the upper deck. Like, it got silent.
Yeah.
So from seeing that to like some of the clips I've seen of her on the indies right now, like I think putting in the freaking work, and I think Moxley's one of those people that sees somebody bust an ass and is going to reward it.
Absolutely.
So if this is like a stable of like, hey, I've been on the indies, these are the people I like, I'm cool with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll see.
I mean, we're
that
nowhere.
Judo toss looked damn good on that security guard. She hooked that dude and just.
Yeah, it did.
He didn't have to do anything. He was going.
This would be about the time that you want to start a new faction, though, especially to build them up and get them going. I could see, I mean, of course, Mina wouldn't be a contender, but I could see Mox grabbing a solid tag team, maybe off of the indies, and contending for those trios titles now that the Bastard Pool Combat Club, or whatever the crap they're calling it.
I think they're still calling it Blackpool Combat Club, but you've got the Bastard involved, so
Right.
I love it. I think Pac fitting in with BCC is perfect.
Right.
Because I mean, it's all that kind of strong style, whatever. He brings that little bit of a flippy element, but he's also pretty grounded outside of like the 2 flips he does.
Correct. Yeah, I mean,
He's very Blackpool Combat Club-esque, and then he also has a sweet 540 flip. Like,
yeah, and I mean that's all the extension needs is you got Claudio, who's the super strong one. You have Yuta, who they're all grounded and technical, but he is more so, I would say, out of the three of them, a little more technically grounded.
well,
And,
he was a pure champion or ROH. Like, he's
right,
perfect for that style.
and then bringing in Pac to do all the high fly stuff that he can do. And sure, he doesn't do it all that often, but he still can.
Yeah.
Versus having three dudes that can just knock the teeth out of each other, then it adds a little bit of variance in that whole trios division.
Yeah, which I think it needs. I think having a little bit more. There's been a lot of incredible talent in that division, but there has been a lot of incredible talent that does the same thing. Like Bullet Club Gold fights kind of the same as House of Black, fights kind of the same as Patriarchy. You've kind of got a bunch of trios that fight relatively the same. So to bring in a different element, I don't mind it.
For sure. For sure. Moving on, we're going to kind of speed through. I'm trying to recap. We had a big 8-man match that I don't remember who was in it other than...
It was a conglomeration.
Yeah, I feel like it was conglomeration. Jericho and Strong.
Jericho's, the Learning Tree and Strong, which was a fun match. Nothing like earth shattering coming out of that one.
Right. Our women's champ came out and said that the celebration is not going to happen, and then turned around and walked away.
One of the best lines.
She didn't do anything between that.
One of the best lines she's had since she started the company is this town may be called Champagne, but by the looks of it, it's warm, flat horse piss beer on a plate. I was like, God.
Just if she wrote that, great. If the writer in the back wrote that, even better.
Even better.
That's
the brief flashing of like what she was wearing under the robe with the title for that like couple seconds before the smile turned to just a look of disgust. She covers herself back up. It's like that's enough. Yes. You don't get any more.
Right.
She's killing it. She's killing it. I
absolutely
can't wait to see where this goes next.
And then after that, we technically had our main event. Even though we had a segment after our main event, we had Ricochet's debut in AEW. And not necessarily debut, but debut singles match.
Yes.
Ricochet has come to AEW, and his first opponent is Kyle Fletcher. If any of you know anything about me and Dylan, it's that we have Kyle Fletcher on number 1 on our top underrated wrestlers list. Eventually, people will realize his talent if they haven't already.
Seems like Tony has gathered what we already know. Because, I mean, you bring in Ricochet, and it's like, who's a guy that can take all of his offense, look great doing it, give it back to him just as hard, and, like, he's going to make Ricochet look like $1 million and still not just lay down and take it. Like, that was a fantastic back and forth, and, like, that to me is how you continue building a star in Kyle Fletcher and remind people just how damn good Ricochet is.
Absolutely. And then after that match, we had good old Will Ospreay come out.
Oh, bruv.
Will Ospreay came out setting up what everyone knew was coming. When people think of flippy dippy wrestling, they think of Will Ospreay and Ricochet in the best of Super Juniors doing something that had never been done before at that point. And
it split the wrestling business in half.
Literally.
I mean, we had it. I cannot, like, I can't stress enough just how much that was if you were a wrestling fan at that point in time, you had to be in one of the two camps. Like, there was no one that was a serious fan that didn't have an opinion.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then you have that, which eventually led to the creation of AEW. Mm-hmm. But very much so. You had Japanese independent wrestling scene, and you had WWE marks. And no offense to the WWE marks, I'm technically one of them, though I talk about AEW more. It's a long conversation.
Tribalism is lame.
Tribalism is lame. Wrestling is wrestling. And the fact that you're seeing more of the independent style of wrestling on WWE tells you that. So,
yep.
But yes, a solid debut. Will comes out. He doesn't even get to say anything on the microphone before Pac hits him with a poison rana, spikes him hard.
Look like a murder.
Absolutely, especially
Pac
on
is
that
so
stage.
good. Pac is so damn good.
Just
Because
the
you know that
fun.
Osprey probably didn't feel a thing, and it looked like he got killed.
Absolutely.
Pac is so good.
Absolutely. Which, of course, sets up the all-out pay-per-view that is happening this weekend as well. Good Lord, wrestling.
So much wrestling.
And we're having Will Ospreay versus Pac for the international title, which we might have a prediction video on later. We're still trying to figure out content, but I'll go ahead and say my prediction right now. Ospreay's going to take it, because why wouldn't you have Ospreay versus Ricochet for a title?
I'm going to make this prediction video even more boring and say I agree.
Yeah. See?
Put it on the
is
board.
what it is. Yeah.
No, I mean,
We'll
I
write
think
it on the board.
Pac is, Pac being part of the Trios champions, like, he doesn't need the international championship right now. Ospreay he's got it back. Let him go on the run that he's supposed to go on before he moves, fingers crossed, up. Because Lord knows if anybody needs a run with that championship, it's Ospreay. Maybe not right now,
Right.
but at some point.
Right. Nah, man, it's great to be an indie guy. When let me correct myself. It's great to be a 2013 to 2018 indie guy,
Yes.
because if you were paying attention during all of that, all your indie guys are now in a big company and doing work.
I'll touch on it later when we get to Bash in Berlin, but I have one of those moments where it's just like I'm sitting there having this kind of surreal, like, you just sometimes when you watch wrestling and you follow guys' careers, you have those moments where, like, I remember watching this dude when he was in, like, this venue with 200 people, and now he's here.
Right.
So I'll touch on that when we get to Bash in Berlin. But yeah, it is a great time to have been watching, like, New Japan in the 2010s, Progress in the 2010s, like CZW.
Yeah.
So many of these promotions have just, talent has just, Ring of Honor, PWG, like, so many of these guys are on the top tier now, and it is awesome.
Indeed it is. The last little segment that we got. Bryan Danielson coming out and actually speaking on his contract. His contract expired on August 1st of this year, and he has basically said, what is next for the American Dragon? He responds with, you're going to have to pry this championship from my cool dead hands. So we're looking at a fighting champion, even though his contract is expired. Sure, this may turn into a part-time champion situation, but it's going to be a fighting champion.
Well, the two things I took away from it, like the two big sticking points I took away from it, is he said, I am going to have neck surgery sooner rather than later. And I'm not retiring from full-time competition until someone takes this belt from me. But he kept saying full-time. And this wasn't like in the lead up to Swerve where he said, like, if I lose this, not only will this be my last match as a full-time competitor, it will be my last wrestling match. This, I like that he is leaving the door open, and if we get Danielson once a year, awesome. If we get Danielson once every 2 years, awesome. Whatever it takes, like, I think we are both in agreement. As much as I love watching these guys wrestle, if it is like, hey, for the sake of my livelihood and my ability to walk and hold my kid, I have to walk away, dude, walk away.
Right.
Like, but if he can give us another 6 months, another year, whatever he's got in the chamber for this title run, personally, I think he's got month and 13 days, just looking at the calendar. But if he can give us a hell of a run, even if it's like 10 matches in a month and change, or if it's 2, give us something. So I guess I'll let you tell the back end of this one, and we'll get into our thoughts on that.
Well, he just says the locker room is hungry. First come, first serve, step up to the plate, and we get a video from Jack Perry, which...
Little bastard.
Yeah, and it, it just has for me, it has the feel of just going, all right, what is a little bit of backstage drama that we could pull out into the crowd? What is a guy that we know can go, but also what is a guy that can keep up with Bryan? And if we're lucky, put on a banger of a match. But at the same time, we're not worried if he doesn't because we're not expecting people to buy this pay-per-view. That's
I don't know, man. The card that I'm seeing so far, it looks like they're trying to outdo what they've done. They're almost trying to outdo what they did in Wembley. It's crazy.
They're trying their hardest to put like SummerSlam storytelling, like mid-year storytelling into 2 weeks.
And I just but we'll get back to there's two segs I completely forgot about until we started talking. They set up matches at All Out, but I told you off air I had thoughts on this Jack Perry thing.
Yep.
Honestly, right now, if this is the storyline that carries through, like if maybe it's like he beats Perry at All Out, Perry finds his way back through somehow to get another shot and maybe retires him at Tacoma, whatever. I think that right now they've built and they are building Jack Perry, and this is crazy to me as somebody that watched him from Jungle Boy in Spring Break. They've built Jack Perry to be one of the most efficient heels in the company. And almost like a Dominic Mysterio level of hatred.
Yeah.
But he's, to me, like I never thought he was a promo guy. I never thought he was a good promo. I always thought he just kind of felt wooden on the microphone. And since he's fully turned, he's felt good on the mic. He's really brought it in the ring because he's always had it in the ring.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it. If Jack Perry is the one that pulls off retiring Danielson from full-time competition, you talk about nuclear levels of heat. And you'll hear the argument that, well, that's not what we want to see. Like, well, that's the point. It's supposed to piss you off.
Right.
When he dumped out the real glass at Wembley, it was a middle finger to every single person that still backs CM Punk. Yep. When he does certain things, the intent is to piss you off. That's what being a heel is. I'm going to shock some of you. Being a bad guy means making people angry.
For sure.
Now, all that to say, he's probably going to lose it all out, and maybe they just move forward from that. But I could tell you that match is going to be good.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It'll be okay.
Maybe this is where it sets up Danielson Okada. Because could you imagine?
Oh, don't
Okada retiring Danielson? Come on.
Yeah, don't do that.
Could you imagine?
Don't speak those dreams.
I'm so sorry I ruined your career, bitch.
Ridiculous. But so yes,
it
hit me.
The two things that I totally forgot about, we had the promo seg from Hangman and Swerve. Swerve is leaning full into the heel. And if you're still cheering for Swerve after that promo segment, I don't know what to tell you, bud. We're getting a steel cage, Hangman, Swerve. And I think Hangman brought up the best point of all. We've wrestled 3 times, and you have not found a way to beat me by yourself once. So let's leave everything else outside.
So if we know anything about wrestling promos,
somebody's climbing over that cage.
Oh, for sure.
But
for sure.
The escalation of violence in this, I think that's perfect. Steel cage. And then speaking of escalation of violence, Daniel Garcia, MJF. I don't know how we forgot about this. Daniel Garcia comes out because MJF is just running down the locker room. Go watch the promo. It's great. I'm not even going to try to attempt to quote it. Garcia comes out, tries to attack him, tries to get MJF up for the second rope tombstone like MJF did to him, and they get pulled apart. And they're setting up a match for All Out, which is just perfect blood feud, man. Like, I love that he got re-signed because I think Daniel Garcia is one of those guys that is just so damn good. And I think people are just now really starting to appreciate what he's doing. But we're getting a little bit less of the serious hip thrusty, whatever. Like, this is a man who's ready to fight. This is Red Death coming back.
Yeah.
With all of the stuff that he's learned in the Jericho Vortex coming in, with this much heat behind it, I think it's going to be awesome.
It's gonna be a good one.
So
It's
yeah,
gonna be good.
we called our shot. 20 minutes on AEW.
I hate it. I hate it so much. I'm sorry that you have to listen to content. Like I want you to know that we sit here for an hour before we have these conversations on recording and have these conversations of, all right, so we're gonna stick it at 45 minutes, right? Yep, 45 minutes, and then we'll go on a tangent for AEW for 20 minutes. So let's try and aim for 45 minutes. We're at 25. So SmackDown.
We can do it.
On SmackDown, we had the two major standouts for me was we had two title matches on the Friday before a pay-per-view. We had the United States Championship match, LA Knight versus Ludwig Kaiser, with LA Knight retaining, and we had the women's match, which was Nia Jax and Michin in a street fight, which, by God, if Michin's not dead.
Oh, she definitely, as God is my witness, she was cut in half by that trash can.
She had to have been.
She took I don't know, I forget what they're calling Nia Jax's bonsai drop, but Michin inside of a trash can takes the bonsai drop. Oh my God! Oh yeah, the Annihilator. She takes the Annihilator.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it just crushes the trash can over her in a way that, like, if she definitely wasn't walking right at the very least coming out of that.
Yeah,
That looked like it sucked.
It looked rough.
But at the same time, looked really good.
It looked really good, though.
So good. It was
the first bonsai drop that looked good.
It was. It's a perfect visual, but it's also something that you could not pay me enough to take.
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
Which leads to a small. I'll call it a small little segment. How do you feel about that? Boo-ba-doop. I don't know. We're trying here, folks. I am under the weather and souped up on pills. So, Dylan, how do you feel about the whole, like, smaller pay-per-view for WWE, like, putting matches on earlier in the week, but only having 2 or 3 title matches inside of a pay-per-view, which we will go on to continue talking about later in this episode?
I think if we're going to continue the brand split, I know we already complained about too much content. If we're going to continue to have the brand split and we're going to continue to have like 5-match pay-per-views, we're going to have to go back to separate branded pay-per-views.
Yeah.
Because you've got 2 sets of tag titles, you've got 2 sets of heavyweight titles, you've got 2 sets of mid-card titles, you've got 2 sets of women's titles, you've got 8 to 10 championships. And on Bash in Berlin, they defended 3.
Yeah.
And now the other 2 non-title matches, like, I don't think you take those off. But if we're going to have this many titles, you're going to have to defend them. And I think just like defending, like the tag titles only being defended on Raw and SmackDown, it doesn't give them that same oomph that they would have if you had one set of tag team champions and they went back and forth, right, or one world champion. But I do like the shorter pay-per-views. I like that it's much more palatable, and especially with WWE, because like they were the ones that had that Mania one year that went almost 8 hours.
Yeah.
I love a good 4-hour pay-per-view, but once you start getting hour 5, it's a lot.
Yes, very much so. If AEW is anything to attest for it.
If I'm paying $50 for a pay-per-view, give me 6 hours. If I'm paying $5 for Peacock, 3 and out. Let's go.
Right. No, for sure. And I understand that. I feel like in order for titles to have the same emphasis that you want, I mean, I understand like mid-card and world title are completely different, separate things. But in order, let's take your tag division, for example. If you take your tag division and you have them contend for titles every other month or every other week on your TV show, and then you don't put them on a pay-per-view, then you're looking at it and you're going, okay, well, these guys aren't even worthy of a pay-per-view. So you're lessening your tag champions versus if every now and then, just every now and then, you threw in a world title defense on TV. Sure, it could end in BS, skullduggery, whatever. But at least it was defended.
Yeah.
So there's back and forth to it.
I know people give AEW a lot of shit for like, well, they've got too many titles, but you watch an AEW pay-per-view and maybe one or two of those titles aren't defended. WWE's got, just by my count, I think it's like eight or nine, and on a pay-per-view you'll see three.
Right.
So I mean, like, I think it's the nature of like split brands and stuff like that. You're going to have a fair amount of titles. It's going to happen. You can't have 100-person roster fighting for three titles. I get it. But put them on shows or rotate. Like, now your world championships need to be defended on every show. That's like every pay-per-view. At least one of those two has to. But I'd like to see the tag team championships move in more. I'd like to see the women's championships move in more. I don't know. I don't hate it, I think, for what they're doing, but I just kind of wish, like, especially for the wrestlers, like, give those a bigger stage.
Absolutely.
And some non-title matches don't need to be on the pay-per-view.
I agree. It depends on how big the grudge match is. I mean, take example, we had Punk versus McIntyre.
That's a pay-per-view match.
It's a pay-per-view match. It's had months and months and months of build-up, and then here we are.
Terror Twins and Dom and Liv, that's another one. Months and months of build. That's a pay-per-view match. I get it.
Right.
But if next month those same titles that weren't defended don't get defended again, well, now we have to start having a conversation like, what's the point?
Right. Very much so. Very much so. Well, moving on. Off of SmackDown. We're going into Rampage. The only comment I have is 3 words, my friend. Just grit your teeth.
I love it.
Boy, oh boy, what a debut from Grizzled Young Veterans.
I'm so glad they've made it into AEW. We haven't gotten the All Elite graphic yet, but I mean, I feel like it's a matter of time. Those guys are so damn good, and I'm glad that they are on the stage that they are, and in a company where they're going to have people that are complementary style. It's going to be great. I love it.
For sure. I mean, if you know anything about me, I love a good tag team match. And the fact that you are doing nothing but stacking more and more talent. And not just more and more talent, but talent that understands tag team wrestling. Sometimes I feel like we have guys that just come in and they're like, all right, cool. We are a tag team because we can do flippy tandem offense. Like, no. I'm talking about the guys as simple as having a guy, I'm in a headlock. Classic wrestling thing. I'm in a headlock. I'm going to push this guy back into the ropes and whip him off. But by doing so, I have my hand up for my partner to tag. Just that simple little nod just goes, you understand what's going on here.
Well, and the chemistry of like cutting the ring in half. Like every bit of offense you're doing is to keep this person from crossing that imaginary boundary and essentially making it a legal 2-on-1. And they do that very well.
Very much so.
I love that kind of, like, it's a chemistry thing. Like, you could see that these two guys get it, and their minds are working on the same wavelength with minimal communication.
Indeed.
So it makes a good tag team.
It's phenomenal. Yeah, so if you haven't seen it, go check out Grizzled Young Veterans. But a match that we need to go see as we move on to Collision, because we didn't watch Collision this week, because, once again, fatigue.
And college football, man, come on.
It's less so for me.
That's
It's Fletcher versus Tomohiro Ishii. Good old, not Murder Grandpa, but it's Murder Grandpa the second. It was what we're getting to.
Here you go, Tony Khan. Take my money.
Yeah, just the fact that you did it on a Saturday show is nuts, and that tells you the scale of AEW.
Yeah. I love that they're doing such crazy stuff, like some of these matches that are getting put on free TV to set up bigger, crazier things later. It's awesome.
Absolutely. And then we move on to the big pay-per-view of the weekend. Good old Bash in Berlin from WWE was at 11:30 on a Saturday. Not to make the pun, made me want to bash my skull in because I had stuff going on that day and couldn't watch it live. We started off with Cody versus Kevin. Dylan, it's still on the board, but it didn't happen. The KO heel turn is still in the midst. It hasn't happened yet.
It's a
But
sizzling, slow burn.
but boy, did we have the teases. Boy, did we have a pretty good match.
They had I'd say, a very good match. And KO on SmackDown making the comment about, like, I know that Cody hurt his knee on the Europe tour and nobody wants to say anything about it. And then before he left the ring, he leaned into Cody's ear and said, just remember you asked for this. And that gave me chills.
Yep.
Cody finally selling the knee, and KO just like, I'm watching it. This is one of those rare times where I'm gonna completely cheer the heel. I'm just like, kick it, do it, like Emperor Palpatine. I'm just like, let the hate flow through you. Kick the knee, apron power bomb, yes. But I love that the story and commentary. Wade Barrett on commentary made this for me because he was voicing my exact, like, why is he not doing it? I know that that's in there, and Wade Barrett saying, like, he doesn't have that same killer instinct, and it's going to cost him this match, and that's exactly what happened.
Yep.
So now, I think maybe a friend of ours who commented on our Facebook page might be correct. Mr. Christian Anders said it's got to be in Cody's hometown in October. Think of the heat. Brother, if you're listening, you're right. I think that's got to be where, like, I think that's got to be the full tilt. Like, if he has to maybe turn on TV to get full heel Kevin in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Brother, think of the reaction when he finally apron power bombs Cody to just a sea of boos. I love it. I love wrestling so much.
It's great storytelling. Now, we'll rewind just for a second. Once again, we're trying to keep it at 45 minutes. We'll rewind just a second. Remember when Dylan said that, for a second he broke our trope of cheering the heel? He wasn't cheering the heel. He was cheering the storytelling. Like,
I was.
It wasn't the fact of him going, "Oh my God, he's gonna kick the leg out." It's the moment of he's going to kick the leg and continue the story and do the heel turn. The story's going to continue, and then it didn't, and we still popped for it because the story was still going.
Look,
storytelling.
Kevin Owens was telling a hell of a story in that match, and it made me so happy because he has been one of those guys. He can put on banger matches, but I think, like, that's one of the knocks is maybe storytelling. Right there was cinema. Him and Cody just brought it.
Absolutely. And then moving down the card, we've got second match was strap match, or second match was tag titles.
Women's tag title match. Bianca and Jade are champions in a match that was fine.
Was it sponsored by Gin and Juice again?
No, it wasn't. I don't remember what it was sponsored by. That was full curtain pull here. That was the match where I was like, I need to get food in my system, and so I was watching from the kitchen. The match was fine. I think I think Bianca and Jade are getting better, especially as a tag team unit. I think they're getting better. Nothing earth shattering to me. Fun match.
Good.
It was fine.
And then we had the strap match.
And then the strap match, which I really enjoyed.
Yes, I'm gonna be honest with you. It may just be because I'm so used to a dog collar match in AEW. I'm not a fan of the four corners thing.
So I like the four corners. If you're going to go consecutive, I want it to be a 1, 2, 3, 4 thing. But, like, the lights and when the referee decides when to, I thought it was very muddy, despite the fact that they tried to explain it ad nauseum.
Yeah.
But I am going to say something on this podcast that is going to come at least as a shock to you. Brother, I think I might be a CM Punk fan again.
Get out. Leave. No one wants you here.
I still have so much frustration with Phil Brooks and how he has handled the last 5 years. But damn it, in that match, like, there's those moments where, like, when he finally puts Drew away and he hits that GTS and he puts the bracelet on the hand and he uses the bracelet hand to slap the last one. He's out in the crowd. It's like, man, this reminds me of why I fell in love with CM Punk. And if he could just not be such an asshat backstage, I never would have bailed. So I'm sitting firmly on the fence, but I'm leaning more towards fan than not until he runs his mouth again and says something else stupid. But
which it will inevitably come. Just remember, sometimes people are scumbags, but gimmicks are not. So, unless he's our scumbag, and then the gimmick is a scumbag. May he take some time off or something. I don't remember. And then we've got the Terror Twins and then Dominic and Liv. Fun little match. Just
fun.
a little mixed tag. A good little mixed tag to continue feuds. Judgment Day interferes midway through. Does the whole
Rhea
shindig.
just destroying Carlito and JD McDonough was so fun.
It was awesome.
JD deserves better, but at the same time, that was perfect for that match.
Absolutely. A phenomenal bump from a clothesline from Dominic at the very end. Just Priest standing on the announce table, and Dom just eats a clothesline. Like, just props. Props to you.
I don't know how Rhea got to finish that match. I don't know if you saw the code red that she took or sunset flip powerbomb that she took into the barricade.
Yeah, it was rough.
But her head and shoulders hit that full force.
It was rough.
I don't know if Liv was trying to aim somewhere else or if that was the plan or what, but when she hit, it was one of those where I'm like, okay, could somebody make sure she's conscious? Because, like, Lish from the System got knocked out at TNA over the weekend, and somehow 2 people picked this woman up, didn't realize she was knocked out. Jordan Grace goes out, sees that she's knocked out, and is, like, waving officials over. And, like, if you're a professional wrestler, you have to know that, like, hey, if I'm picking this person up, let me make sure that they're not unconscious. Let me make sure they're not potentially paralyzed, whatever.
Right.
So, like, after seeing that and watching Rio's, like, that little tension, but she took it like a champ.
Someone, please.
Yeah, somebody.
Yeah.
There's signals.
Yeah.
We won't say them on here, but there's signals.
Yes, very much so. But no, Rhea and Damian pick up the win. Solid little fun little match. It was good. And then we move on to the main event of the night, which I have some conversation pieces. I love the fact, I don't remember if we've said it here, if I heard it somewhere else, or if we just had a conversation off air. I love the fact that a heavyweight championship is a fighting championship and the WWE championship is a story championship.
Yes, 100%.
I love it. Now, sure, of course, you have storytelling, especially with Randy Orton involved. Randy's going to tell a story and a half when he's in the ring. But just talking about pure athleticism when it comes to beating the tar out of each other, it has happened every world heavyweight title match. It is what keeps it relevant. And now that Gunther is holding the title, I say now, he's been holding it and he retained. But now that he is holding that title, it is going to become nothing but the equivalent of a MMA fighting championship.
Dude, I mean, him and Orton battered each other for about 20 minutes. And it was
good.
It was really good.
Like, sometimes it's rough, but it was good.
Where I got a little bit of a sentimental emotion with this match was, like, me and you have been watching since he was Walter in Progress, in the electric ballroom in front of maybe 200 people.
Yep.
And I love that they didn't bring up Progress, which kind of was like, I get it because it's the UK, but they brought up WXW, where he was a champion for a long time in Germany.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, Michael Cole just put over WXW on a WWE pay-per-view, and Gunther is in the main event in Germany.
Right.
It was one of those, like, there was that surreal, like, Gunther's fighting Randy Orton in a main event of a WWE pay-per-view. This is, like, it's one of those things you when you start attaching yourself to these guys, like, early on, you're like, wouldn't it be crazy if one day this guy's fighting for the title? And then you laugh, like, oh, yeah, maybe one day.
Right.
It literally happened.
Yeah.
He beat Randy Orton by choke out.
So that turns around and has you going, what are we looking at now? Now, of course, you have AEW guys and you have WWE guys. But there's not... Me personally, I have a good bit of focus on the indie scene. I know what is going on around most of them, yes, when it comes to Beyond, Defy, when it comes to Progress, like, they do bring in a lot of guys from other big companies. And you can call it a suck thing, you can call it not a suck thing. But those smaller guys that are showing off right now, that are the ones that we were watching back in 2013 to 2017, and we were like, they're going to end up competing for something big.
Yeah.
They could be in a couple of years, and that's nuts to think about.
I mean, Ospreay, ZSJ, Walter, like, were all guys that we were watching in Progress, and now they are holding championships in the 3 big companies.
Right. I mean, shoot, Ilya Dragunov.
Ilya
That's contended
Dragunov.
for intercontinental titles. I'm waiting on the Cara Noir call up
Oh, man.
because it's gonna happen.
Whoever calls up Cara Noir is going to get just a freaking superstar.
They just have to get the gimmick.
Yes.
That's all it is.
And understand the gimmick and let him take control of the gimmick.
Absolutely.
But back to Gunther, Bash in Berlin chokes out Randy Orton to a pass out and one of my favorite things. The referee hits the hand, realizes Orton's not pushing back, picks it up, drops it once, and calls for that freaking bell.
Sir.
No 3 drops. He MMA style. He hit the hand, and Orton's not immediately pulling the hand back. And so when he goes to pick the hand up and it drops, that's ball game. Orton's out. Gunther choked out Randy Orton in a main event of a WWE pay-per-view in the year of our Lord 2024. What a time to be a fan.
When people are speculating that Randy is just trying to get his numbers up to be even with Cena.
Yeah.
So it's a fun one, dude. It's a
It
fun
is.
time to be around. But that is the week of wrestling, which we managed to do in 46 minutes. We were so close. Dylan, hit me with one takeaway. What is the biggest thing that you got from this week?
Biggest thing I got from this week, man, is just we said it 1,000 times. I think we live in one of the best times to be a fan. Whatever style of wrestling it is that you like, there is a company that is doing it well, and there's a real chance that if you fall in love with a guy on the independents, they could one day be fighting for a top title. It was surreal watching Gunther choke Randy Orton out. I mean, from the Electric Ballroom to the Uber Arena in a main event.
It's nuts, dude.
Wrestling's awesome, man.
It's nuts.
Get invested and pay attention to the indies.
My takeaway is cheer the story.
Cheer the story, baby.
If you see storytelling, cheer it. Because I know from my standpoint, once again, I nicknamed myself the storyteller for that reason. I love to tell stories, and the fact that you want to cheer the story means that I'm doing something well. But Dylan, where can they find you, my friend?
You can find me, hopefully not blocking your path, at a Pro Wrestling 225 show. You can also find me as Dylan Gilbert on social media, at Dylan_Gilbert37 in a row on Instagram. Not the in a row part, that's just a Kevin Smith reference, sorry. And then the Action Figure Weekly podcast.
Shoot yeah. And you can find me at Alex Braddock or the Alex Braddock, depending on what platforms you're looking on. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, the like button. Also, I will come out and say it. I have officially started working on what I am no longer calling Victory Roll Games. I am calling Victory Roll Tabletop.
Okay.
I have started working on it. The video is in editing. As soon as I get it out, it'll either be this week or next week, but the video is in editing. I will get it out and I will let all of you know. But I end the podcast the same way we started. Dylan, hit me with the outro. Let's see if you can do it.
Whether it is a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good night, whatever time you are listening to us, thank you for listening to the Victory Roll Wrestling Podcast, and tell your friends, like, share, subscribe.
Heck yeah.
See you guys next week.